Morning, everyone. Welcome to this morning's edition of the MPC Markets Morning Call, 2nd of April, 2026. Stocks rallied overnight as investors chose hope, over reality, really, because there's been quite a few troops deployed this week. If you look at the numbers, and we're gonna, excuse me, we're going to go through our sort of regular stats. So, deployment this week. So we've got, they announced last night 12 A-10 Warthog attack planes, which are generally used for support for ground troops. 2 destroyers, 1 supercarrier, the George H.W. Bush, 5,000 amphibious Marines, and 2,500 MEU Marines, so which are paratroopers apparently. And that's the smallest unit that the US has. And that all really points to like a coastal attack. So taking the strait, essentially. If you're deploying these, all of these different things, and all of these specific troops, etc., it really all does just funnel and point to very laser focused of escorting ships through and very targeted amphibious ground attacks. It is nowhere near enough for any sort of sustained conflict or occupation, etc. So be careful what boots on the ground is not necessarily, like, boots on the ground means occupation. If they deploy these resources, and it is very centered around that Strait of Hormuz, then it'll be a short targeted attack. Obviously, Trump has, he's got a big speech coming up. It's going to be at 11 o'clock today, so about an hour and 10 minutes. Everyone's kind of waiting for that. And look, I could probably write the speech right now. He's going to have a massive crack at at NATO. He's going to threaten to leave NATO. He's going to say that the allies are gutless. That they've destroyed them, that they've got no navy, that they've got no air force, and they're going to be out of there in 2 to 3 weeks. So half these troops won't even turn up for like the next few days anyway. That's just not happening. But everything kind of points to a hard and fast sort of blitzkrieg, and then some form of attempt to get out. So, and look, it sounds like I'm being really unfair on Trump because I've been quite critical, but he's not the only president to have done this. Republican presidents in the past, like 1990s Iraq War, they said, Donald Rumsfeld turned around and said, it'll be days, maximum weeks. They were there for 8 years and then that was the 2003 Iran. And then Afghanistan as well, which would have been, that's the Bush administration. They were going in for a short, sharp attack to topple the regime there in the Taliban. That lasted 20 years, and that was and the Russians have been taught that lesson as well in the past. And then, and just so I'm being fair and balanced, Obama went into Libya and said, this whole days, not weeks line, hilariously is like common across the whole lot, but even the Democrats are guilty of this. The whole days, not weeks in Libya, and then they basically passed it off to 8 months later to UN forces, which is very, very left wing of the Democrats. But the conflict still went on. Basically, they just handed it off to our allies, which they probably funded and then probably supported anyway. So I think, and that went on for yet another year. So this is not remotely new. For some reason, we just think it's new. Polling in America, basically, they think it's over. So look, and the Western media is doing a fantastic job at it. But these daily attack events, I've updated these today. We're still above the average. So we're, the average, I've got these numbers here now, the average attacks per day for the Allies, 215, 73 for the, and we hit 106 yesterday for Iran. And so, the Allies have backed it off a little bit, but, and then Benjamin Netanyahu as well. It was a little bit of an old news story, but he turned around and said that, whatever the US does in this Iran conflict, whether they back out or not, it won't stop them invading Lebanon. So, some positive news there from Israel. Sorry. This is part of our new dashboard, which is going to be, I'm basically going to update this daily and make it available to you all. And it'll be updated about 8 in the morning every day. But it'll be those normal attack numbers, the map of any significant attacks for 48 hours. This is the amount of cumulative barrels that we're losing. And this is the day. So if it was to stop tomorrow, if they just struck peace tomorrow, it's going to take 31, on average, about 31, 32 days to return to normal supply. And obviously, the longer that goes on, the higher that number gets. US troop build-up is one part of the dashboard as well. And this is traffic in the Strait of Hormuz. So you can see that they're letting through some traffic, albeit not much. This was this was sort of the green dotted line is the the average tankers, and the blue dotted line is the average traffic that went through pre this conflict. So we've got to get back to that green and blue line, and then we'll be right. And we are just hoping this number doesn't go beyond 40 basically. So as you can see, there's a trend up in the amount of troops deployed. But as I say, this will be all on one dashboard. I'm still working on, on the bugs and things, but it's going to be a really handy thing for you to be able to see through the truth, and it'll just be the numbers. It won't be any commentary. There won't be any verifying of, Trump statements or anything like that. It'll just be the facts. Despite all this, and despite the fact that oil is still hovering around $100, here we are green again. The oil companies got belted. It's just broadly green. There really wasn't any, major. Nike got belted 15% on poor earnings and poor outlook. SpaceX confirmed that they've filed a confidential IPO document, and there wasn't much else in the way of in the way of news. Intel was up 8%. They're buying back a data center that they sold to private equity a while back. I can't imagine that went, still up 8%, but, private equity doesn't tend to give those sorts of things away. But we are entering the danger zone here, because the last couple of days of the week have been recently the danger days for equities. Any kind of positivity has generally been midweek. We are shut for Good Friday in Australia. There'll be a half day there somewhere in either Friday or Monday, because the US doesn't close for 4 days. It only 3.5 day limit. So there'll be a half day more than likely on Easter Monday. But then maybe due to payrolls, I'll just have to verify that. But we do have payrolls numbers out, expected around 60, 70,000 again on Friday while the market's shut. So that's not great. In terms of Tuesday being a little bit of a shock, but equities themselves, ASX bounced back hard yesterday. Great response from them. Obviously, gold helping, and the rest of the market just broadly helping, I suppose, overall, the tech companies, etc. Nikkei again just dancing to its own beat of its own drum. We actually still have, on a 5-day basis, the S&P down slightly for the week, quarter, down 0.5% for NASDAQ and down 1% for the Russell. The Dow's slightly up, and we're up, broadly across 1% across the board. Technical's not looking anywhere near as horrible at this juncture, but we've still got sells in the NASDAQ and the Russell. You probably just ignore the hourly there. Commodities-wise, gold is... gold's up 2%, silver pretty much flat. Same with copper, etc. Everyone's just waiting for this Trump, this Trump thing at 11 o'clock, which is about an hour away. So until we sort of get that, there'll be a lot of hopium and there'll be a lot of optimism in that. But just remember the facts, and remember that every president says this, and try to see the forest for the trees a little bit. So we've actually done quite a few of these portfolio reviews, and with the new app Portfolio Guardian, we just scan the QR code, go and give it a go, and we can have a chat about it. It's been quite popular. I'll get people to chuck some reviews up online, and yeah, really useful tool, and you know, we highly recommended. You can also scan to get Mosaic, and which is likely where that tracker is going to be available from, and you know, embedded in the app. So you know, scan, and we'll give you a month free, and the recommendations on top of all the content, everything which is already free. So have a great Easter weekend. Try to, you know, forget about the markets and not drive anywhere, I suppose. Yeah, Bulls versus Bears will be this afternoon instead of Friday. So join me, Kai Chen, and Jonathan Takadina to talk markets, and you know, a broader sort of wrap up of the week in equities and commodities. But yeah, if you don't watch that, I will speak to you next Tuesday.